What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. I know that usually this channel is kind of aimed towards writing and my publishing journey and my upcoming debut, but this time of year, fall, Halloween time, is really when I start to read more than ever. I do read throughout the year, but around this time, I really read more than ever. And I like to read horror books. I like to read some supernatural stuff. Anything with kind of a spooky vibe around this time is perfect for me. Um, I also will binge, like real trashy horror movies and stuff like that at this time. So I'm kind of in my glory. And just because of that and because of how happy this season kind of makes me when it comes to reading and writing, I wanted to share just some of the books that I usually reread around this time. I'm big on rereading, I'm a huge rereader. And so I wanted to share those books with you. And hopefully, you guys can pick some of these books up. You can see them right here. And I'm about to go through those with you. The first book here is a collection by Edgar Allan Poe. Everybody who is a reader has probably read some Poe. I read it in school, in undergrad and in grad school. I really studied Edgar Allan Poe. I'm a huge fan of his stories. And this book right here, I usually will reread this every year. I have a bookmark here that just fell out of this book. I haven't read this in a year, but last Halloween I usually read a couple of stories in here. And I just really love Edgar Allan Poe. I love Krigadora, The Black Cat, Fall of the House of Usher. That's another one that I really like. That one is usually really studied in school. That and The Cask of Amontillado, but there's a lot of good books, a lot of good stories from Edgar Allan Poe. And honestly, if you just grab any collection of Edgar Allan Poe's books, you'll be able to find what you need to really put yourself in the spooky mood. This next one is kind of a change in gears from Edgar Allan Poe. This is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendricks. I picked this up last year, right before Halloween. I'm a big Grady Hendricks fan. I wasn't too big a fan of Horror Store. I just couldn't get through that one. But I did read The Final Girls Support Group. That was really good. And this is my favorite novel of his that I've read so far. This book is set in the 80s, and it's about two best friends, and one of whom becomes possessed, and the other has to try to save her best friend. And it's really good. It's a great throwback to all the 80s stuff. Like I said, when I said earlier in the beginning of this video that I'm a fan of like trashy horror movies, Night of the Demons is one of my favorites. And I don't know if anybody's seen that, but that's about as trashy as you can get. And this gives big Night of the Demons vibes. So shout out to Grady Hendricks for this particular book. Now, there are two books on this list that I haven't read yet, and this is one of them. And I actually picked this book up a few years ago. Now, I'm showing you the spine here because there's no cover on this book. But this is Joe Hill's 20th Century Ghosts. This is another collection of short stories by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. I really like Joe Hill's work. I've read his full-length novels. Some of you have probably heard of Horns. That's like his biggest one, I think. But he's written some great stuff, but I've never read any of his short stories. I picked this up last year in Jim Thorpe, which is a really cool little Pennsylvania town just outside of the Poconos. And there's a Harry Potter coffee shop there. There's like a train you can do around this mountain. It's really cool. And this was like the kind of like the perfect book to pick up at a little independent bookstore in that town. And I just never got around to it last year for some reason. So this year I'm making it a point to read this one. I figured that since we just talked about Joe Hill, we might as well get into Stephen King. So, like, I'm still holding the book like this because that's how I held Joe Hill's book. This is Full Dark, No Stars. This is a collection of 4 novellas. These are pretty good. I have read this one before. Big Stephen King fan. I mean, I think anybody who likes horror, whether it be films or books, does like Stephen King. He writes some really great spooky stuff. And this is like one of the newer purchases I've made, of anything Stephen King. I did read this last year. I want to read it again because I honestly wasn't a huge fan of it last year. But a couple of friends have read this, and they keep telling me great things about it. So I'm going to revisit this and see if my mind has changed at all on it. But there's 4 novellas in here. There's one that was made into a Netflix movie, 1922. That was actually the one that I liked the least, and that's the first one in here. But A Good Marriage is the last story in here, and Big Driver is the second. And those two I liked quite a bit. So definitely check those out if you can find this. All right, the next two are classics, and I don't know. I don't. I know that the zombie thing has kind of gotten a little old and stale at this point, but I love zombies. I've always loved zombies. I love anything regarding zombies. You know, Return of the Living Dead. Going back to the trashy horror movies, Return of the Living Dead is one of my favorites. And as you guys know, that's a pretty trashy, goofy horror comedy, and I love it. Most people don't. And so I had to throw World War Z up on this list. This book right here is a classic. The movie is totally different from the book, but I love that movie as well. But this is one of my favorites. I actually will read this book. I've probably reread this book like 6 or 7 times at this point. I really do like this a lot. And for any zombie fan, you have to, you have to kind of have this up there. All right, this next one is a classic. I have to throw this up there, right with Edgar Allan Poe. But it's The God, Washington Irving, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This is one of my all-time favorites. I will reread this every single year. I have done that for probably the past, legit, probably 10 years. We first had to read this in my undergrad English American literature course. I don't know if you guys can hear the breathing, the heavy breathing and stuff. My husky's walking around and trying to find a place to get comfortable, so the mic is probably picking that up. Yeah, this is great. I reread this. I read this first in undergrad in American lit course, and we really studied this. This and Rip Van Winkle actually are both really great kind of spooky supernatural stories to read around this time. I don't know how many of you have read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it's a lot different than any of the movies or even the TV show that's on Hulu right now. The actual story is a little bit different, and it's a little bit longer than I think some people anticipate. Because I have kind of given this to a bunch of people to kind of read because I love it so much, and I never really got too much positive feedback about it, unless those people were kind of in academia and used to reading short stories like this. This is one of my favorites. I reread this every year, and there's actually some great Christmas stories in this little anthology here. And so usually around Christmas time, I'll pick this up then as well, and I'll go through it again. All right, and the last book on this list is something that I just picked up this year and I haven't read yet. I think I'm going to actually do a reading vlog trying to finish this book because just from the blurb, it is really exciting. I'll read that to you guys. Documentary filmmaker Alice Lindstedt has been obsessed with the vanishing residents of the old mining town dubbed the Lost Village since she was a little girl. In 1959, her grandmother's entire family disappeared in the mysterious tragedy, and ever since the unanswered questions surrounding the only two people who were left, a woman stoned to death in the town center and an abandoned newborn, have plagued her. She's gathered a small crew of friends in the remote village to make a film about what really happened, but there will be no turning back. That sounds good. This book right here looks really good, and it sounds really good. And I know that the cover is pretty basic, but I really like that cover. I think that cover, the simplicity of it and the colors, it kind of does give it a little creepy vibe. So I'm pretty excited to read this. Like I said, I'm probably going to do a reading vlog about this book, so you guys can check that out. But, let me know in the comments if you guys want to see more videos like this, because while I do tend to do a lot more writing and publishing type videos on this channel, I really do love to read, and I really love to read around this time. So since I am going to be reading a lot more around this time, I felt like maybe the content can reflect that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and see y'all later.